In the kingdom of Kandara, nestled between silver hills and thick riverside forests, the royal palace rose like a mountain of ivory. Its spires pierced the sky, and the stone paths beneath were scrubbed until they gleamed under the sun. It was a place where laughter and cruelty danced hand in hand. On a morning thick with mist and the scent of burnt wood, the warriors returned from a raid. Drums announced their arrival, and the townsfolk gathered to see what the soldiers had brought: baskets of grain, captured cattle, and among them, a small figure barely older than a child, Naya. Her wrists were bound with rough hemp rope, and her dress was a torn smear of earth and ash. Her eyes, however, held no tears. Just silence. A silence that stretched deeper than any river and older than any stone in the palace walls. Naya was brought before the palace steward, a man whose joy came only from delivering orders and punishments. He barely looked at her before handing her over to the queen's handmaids. "The queen needs a new girl to clean the silver chamber pots and sweep the lower terraces," he said. "This one will do." From the first day, the palace girls called her Mud Girl. They'd pinch her arms when no one was looking. They would flick ash into her food or spill scented oil on the clean floors so she'd be beaten for it. Her room was a closet beside the furnace, hot in the day, freezing at night, with only a mat of reeds and a broken bowl to her name. But Naya watched everything. She never forgot a face. She memorized the paths through the palace, the patterns of guards, the hours when the queen bathed, and where the jewels were kept. She noticed which handmaid stole from the linen room and blamed another. She knew which steward drank from the wine barrels and pretended it had evaporated. She saw how everyone had masks and how behind every smile was something ugly. Every morning she would rise before the sun and wash the palace stairs with cold water. Every evening she scrubbed the queen's slippers and arranged the jeweled sandals according to color. The queen herself never looked at her. Not once. Naya was a shadow, less than dust, but always there. One day during the Festival of Ancestors, the queen received a necklace, a strand of gold wire strung with blood-red rubies and an emerald pendant carved in the shape of a lion's fang. It was a gift from a neighboring kingdom, and it shimmered even in the dark. The queen called it her breath of power, and wore it constantly, only removing it when she bathed. Naya was tasked with guarding the necklace while the queen soaked in rosewater. The other girls giggled. "Watch it closely, Mud Girl. Maybe it will turn you to stone," one mocked. Another added, "Or maybe it will run away from your filthy hands." Naya said nothing. She stood in the antechamber, holding the silk-wrapped necklace, and listened to the queen hum behind the curtain. Her fingers touched the emerald fang, and for the first time, something warm pulsed under her skin, not from the stone but from inside her. Like the memory of something she once was, or still could be. But she gave the necklace back. Not that day. Not yet. Weeks passed. The palace grew busy as war threatened the borders again. Soldiers came and went. The queen grew impatient and sharp-tongued, and the girls took it out on Naya. They cut her mat in half. They poured honey on her only blanket and laughed when ants crawled on her at night. One even held a burning stick to Naya's wrist, whispering, "If I mark you, maybe you'll stop being so calm." Naya didn't scream. But her eyes, those dark, storm-silent eyes, watched. Always watched. One evening when the moon was too full and the air too quiet, a scream shattered the palace halls. The queen's necklace had gone missing. Guards ransacked every corner. The handmaids were questioned, slapped, even locked up briefly. But no trace of the necklace could be found. Naya was not suspected. She was too invisible. But she knew where it was. She had not stolen it for gold or escape. No, Naya had slipped it into the roots of the old baobab behind the stables, a tree said to house forgotten spirits. Every night she whispered to it, not prayers, not curses, just stories. Her stories. Her name. Her pain. Her truth. She told the tree everything and the roots listened. The handmaids began falling ill one by one. At first it was dreams, twisted visions of Naya standing above them, eyes glowing, lips moving but no sound escaping. Then it became waking fears. Whispers in their ears, phantom hands brushing their necks, shadows darting just behind them. The queen demanded explanations, but the palace priest only muttered about imbalances and disrespected spirits. "Something buried has awakened," he warned, "and it seeks to be seen." Still Naya kept quiet. She served. She scrubbed. But she began to hum, just softly, little notes that sounded oddly like the lullabies of the northern tribes. Songs that hadn't been sung in Kandara in decades. One night the queen's bed caught fire. No candle had tipped. No one had entered. The blaze licked the sheets, burned a hole through her mattress but touched nothing else. The next morning Naya's reed mat was replaced by a small cot. No one said anything, but the girls stopped pinching her. They no longer mocked her when she passed. They looked away. The steward, once cruel, now nodded when she walked by. The guards opened doors without being asked. Naya remained silent, but something had changed. She didn't walk like a slave anymore. She moved like someone who knew exactly where she was going, and why. The queen grew paranoid. Her eyes darted at every servant. She stopped wearing jewelry altogether. Her sleep grew thin, her voice shrill. She ordered the baobab cut down, but the axe blades broke on the first strike. That night, 3 birds died on her windowsill, their feathers smeared with ash. Then came the dream, the same dream shared by everyone in the palace. Naya stood at the throne wearing the ruby necklace. Her skin glowed like sunlit bronze, her clothes shimmered with thread of moon. The palace bowed before her while the queen wept in chains. A lion roared in the background. Then fire. Blinding, roaring fire. And Naya walking away into the flames untouched. People whispered. Was she just a girl? Or something older? Had she come with the raiders? Or had the kingdom summoned her by its own cruelty? Naya never answered. She just continued her chores. But now, when she passed, even the queen turned her head slightly, pretending not to see. They called her Mud Girl still, but only behind closed doors. And still her eyes never forgot. Each morning in the palace began the same way, crimson sunrise spilling across the cold marble floors, voices barking commands, the soft hiss of fine silk brushing past Naya's ankles as she carried wash basins and polished the queen's many silver mirrors. Yet this morning was different. There was a thickness in the air, like the palace itself had woken with clenched teeth. Naya had barely slept. The nightmares came again, whispers in the dark, red stones gleaming in the firelight, and hands reaching from the mud. She didn't scream. Naya never screamed. She had learned to bury her fear in silence, to let her eyes do the speaking. And today they watched with even more care. The queen's chambers were vast and perfumed, filled with golden artifacts and rare bird feathers that made Naya sneeze when no one was looking. But it was the necklace that always drew her gaze. Crimson gold, wrapped like a snake around the queen's throat. Every time she saw it, her breath caught. It shimmered like blood in sunlight and pulsed like a living thing. That morning, the queen flung her gown toward Naya and said, "Mind the dust, Mud Girl. This fabric costs more than your ancestors." The courtiers laughed and Naya bowed low, swallowing her pride. She stepped forward to tidy the queen's jewelry table. The necklace lay there, coiled atop velvet like it had slithered into place. Naya hesitated. Her fingers trembled as they hovered above it. Then it happened. The necklace whispered. A dry, gravel-slick voice slid between her ears. "Asterisk, you are not broken. You are the key, asterisk." Naya jerked back, nearly knocking over a crystal perfume bottle. The queen glanced up, eyes narrowed. "Clumsy girl," she spat. "Touch anything and I'll have your tongue in a jar." Naya bowed again, eyes wide, lips sealed. But the whisper echoed still. She turned it over in her mind as she dusted, as she scrubbed the garden stones, even as she chewed her dry evening bread. She was not broken? The key to what? That night, she lay on the servant's straw mat beside the kitchen hearth, while other girls whispered and giggled about guards and boys and the upcoming harvest festival. Naya remained silent. Her mind was with the necklace. Was she going mad? Was the curse real? And if it was, why had it spoken to her? The next day, Naya was summoned to the queen's bath chamber. The queen reclined in scented water, arms draped like a spoiled leopard. The necklace hung heavy on her neck even there. Naya stepped closer with a tray of oils. As she moved, the whisper came again, clearer this time. Asterisk, the blood of the silenced is in me. Touch me, asterisk. Naya's fingers trembled and the tray nearly tilted. The queen's eyes flashed. You look ill, girl. Perhaps you'd prefer the stocks. No, Majesty, Naya whispered. But her heart was pounding. That night she dreamed again. Not of the past, not of the raid on her village or the chains that followed, but of fire and red stones, and a voice that called her name from deep beneath the palace floor. She awoke gasping. Over the following days, the necklace's voice returned whenever she was near it. It began to tell her pieces of its history. I was made from gold taken from sacred ground, it said. Stolen. Washed in blood. Fed with the pain of the innocent. Now I wait for the vessel to awaken. Naya said nothing aloud, but inside she screamed. Why her? Why now? She tried to stay away. She scrubbed the eastern wing instead. She begged the elder servants to swap duties. But no matter where she went, fate found a way to pull her back to the queen's side. And the necklace was always there, watching. One dusk, a storm rolled over Kandara. Lightning cut through the sky. Thunder rattled the palace roof. The queen called for her handmaids to entertain her as the rain poured down. "You," she pointed at Naya, "bring the necklace box." Naya obeyed, heart in her throat. As she carried the box, the voice became deafening. This is your moment, asterisk. She opened the lid before the queen. The necklace glowed faintly in the candlelight. Its red stones seemed to shimmer wet as if freshly painted in blood. The queen lifted it with careless fingers and fastened it around her neck. Naya didn't blink. Suddenly the queen gasped. Her hand flew to her throat. Her eyes widened. Did you feel that?" she asked the courtiers. They looked confused. The queen stood unsteady, then shook her head. A chill. Nothing. But Naya saw the tremor in her hand. She saw the first seed of fear take root. The necklace had stirred. In the days that followed, the queen began to change. She grew erratic, suspicious. Her meals were sampled thrice. She accused courtiers of betrayal, dismissed maids for imagined offenses. She ordered the palace healer to inspect her skin, claiming it itched where the necklace touched. "Take it off," he said. She slapped him. Naya watched quietly. She began noticing marks beneath the queen's collar. Little red welts like burns. Like the necklace was branding her. The voice, once loud, now whispered only when Naya slept. "Soon," it said. Then came the day of the royal feast. The nobles of surrounding lands gathered, cloaks heavy with rain, jewels glittering under torchlight. The queen wore her finest silks and of course the necklace. She sat atop her golden throne, but her face was pale. Her hand never left her throat. Naya served wine. Moved among the guests like a shadow. And then, just as the drums began to play, the queen screamed ***. She stood, clutching her neck, the necklace burning with sudden red light. Her skin blistered, smoke rose from her collarbone and the guests shrieked. "The curse," someone cried. The necklace seemed to twist and tighten like a snake. The queen fell to her knees. The guards moved forward, but Naya stepped between them. "Don't," she said softly. For the first time she spoke. Her voice was calm, commanding. The guards froze. The queen clawed at her throat, eyes wild. "Take it off. Take it off." Naya stepped forward. "It won't obey you anymore," she said. "It was never yours." The queen gaped, her mouth moving but no words coming. Naya reached forward. The necklace unlatched itself. It slid into her hands, warm but no longer burning. She placed it gently in the jewelry box and closed the lid. The queen collapsed, unconscious. That night, the palace buzzed with rumors. Some said the queen was possessed. Others claimed Naya had bewitched her. But no one challenged her again. The guards didn't stop her as she walked down the royal corridor with the box in hand. She climbed to the highest tower, opened the window, and whispered, "I know now." The necklace inside the box pulsed faintly. "I am not broken," she repeated. "I am the key." She turned the box over, emptying the necklace into the darkness below. The crimson gold vanished into the storm. But Naya did not return to the servant quarters. She didn't go back to rags or beatings or silence. Instead, she took a seat on the throne of the moonlit hall while the queen slept. And for the first time since the raid, her eyes didn't burn with revenge. They burned with purpose. "You're ready for part 3. The sun hung lazily over the riverbanks, a golden coin tossed into the sky by the gods. Naya stood knee-deep in water, her arms raw from scrubbing. The linens she washed floated around her like pale ghosts, each one a memory of spilled wine, perfume, and royal arrogance. The scent of lavender soap didn't mask the ache in her shoulders or the sting in her soul. She moved mechanically, dip, scrub, wring, her mind far from the silken sheets. The queen had spilled red wine across her favorite robe the night before, then accused Naya of sabotage when the stain refused to vanish. The punishment had been swift, an extra day at the river, alone. Or so the guards thought. As she bent to rinse the hem of a velvet cloak, a quiet rustling made her pause. From the trees lining the bank emerged a hunched woman, her skin sagging like bark over a tree, and her eyes sunken but alert. She carried a reed basket filled with worn fabrics. Her hands were mottled with age, but her steps were sure. Naya recognized her vaguely. She had seen the woman in the marketplace before, muttering to herself and bartering herbs no one dared question. The woman dropped her basket beside Naya and knelt slowly. "You scrubbed too hard, girl. You'll tear the silk before you tear out the sin." Naya said nothing. Speaking without permission was dangerous. But something about the woman's voice, low, steady, the kind that grew roots in your chest, made her glance over. The old woman chuckled. You think you're the first mudfoot to serve under the golden roof? I knew your queen when her hair was the color of millet and she still feared shadows. Naya blinked. She dared to speak softly. You were in the palace? The woman nodded. I served her mother. And I washed things dirtier than linen, blood, secrets, curses. Things that couldn't be cleaned with water. She turned to the river and dipped her hands in, watching the ripples catch sunlight. There are stains that sink into spirit. You wear them, girl. They think you're silent because you're weak. But your silence has weight. Naya looked down. Her hands trembled. The words stirred something old and hidden. She remembered being dragged in chains, her village burning behind her. Remembered being told she was nothing now, that her voice was for commands, not for speaking. The old woman continued, her gaze sharp. The necklace she wears, the one with crimson gold, it's not just gold. It comes from the southern cliffs, mined from a cave where no birds sing. That gold drank from the veins of those who carved it. They say it curses greed. And it listens, but only to the one who has tasted pain deeper than death. Naya felt her throat tighten. Listens. Aye, the woman said, wringing out a cloth. It listens for a girl like you. A girl who's swallowed screams for so long, they've turned to flame inside her. That necklace is not hers, child. It waits for someone worthy. And you will see. For a moment neither spoke. The river flowed, uncaring. A heron stepped through the reeds, head low. I heard it, Naya whispered. In the queen's chamber. It spoke. Just once. Told me. I'm the key. The woman didn't look surprised. She only nodded, then reached into her basket and pulled out a smooth, dark stone. She pressed it into Naya's palm. Keep this under your tongue if you ever find yourself near the necklace again. It'll keep your mind clear. The gold speaks with many voices, it can drive the wrong ear to madness. Naya clutched the stone tightly. It felt warm as if it pulsed with a heartbeat. The woman stood. You're not ready yet. But you will be. Suffering shapes steel. One day soon your chains will rust and you'll see their fear behind their laughter. Watch. Listen. Wait. And when the moment comes, don't ask permission. Naya stood, suddenly afraid the woman would vanish. What's your name? The woman smiled. Names are for those who've forgotten who they are. I remember. You will too. And then she was gone, basket, voice and all, melted into the trees as if the river had conjured her and taken her back. Naya finished her task in silence, but the silence felt different now. Not hollow, not empty, but watchful, breathing. When she looked up at the palace towers later that day, they didn't seem so high anymore. The gold on their edges didn't shine as brightly. That night, Naya lay on her straw mat in the servants' quarters, the stone hidden beneath her pillow. The queen's laughter echoed faintly from the grand hall where dancers spun and drums thumped. But Naya was still. Her mind replayed the old woman's words, each one heavy as an iron bell. She closed her eyes and for the first time didn't dream of chains. She dreamed of fire, of a girl with golden eyes, and a necklace that wept blood and whispered her name. Something had changed in the water. And Naya would never scrub the same again. Bro. The golden tray trembled slightly in Naya's hands as she carried the queen's freshly cleaned robe from the drying stand. The scent of honey perfume clung to the fabric, sweet, cloying, thick like syrup. As she turned the corridor near the queen's chamber, she felt the soles of her calloused feet slide on the polished clay floor. Her knee buckled. The robe slipped. And from the jar of sacred honey balanced on the tray's edge, a single sticky stream slithered onto the shimmering garment. There was silence at first, an eerie drawn-out breath from the chambermaids nearby. Then a scream sharp as a blade. The robe was ruined. Gold-stained fabric soaked in a deep patch of amber syrup. Naya froze. Her eyes widened. Not in fear but in something deeper. A knowing. The queen's footsteps approached like thunder in a cloudless sky. Whispers followed, bouncing off the walls. She spilled the queen's honey on the ceremonial robe. The honey from the sacred grove. The queen stood at the doorway, her crown glinting, her mouth twisted. Bring her out, she commanded. Naya was dragged to the courtyard, where nobles lounged under canopies, drinking sweet wine and tossing bones to the hounds. A hush fell over them as the queen emerged, her ruined robe held high like evidence in a sacred trial. This slave, the queen bellowed, has insulted the royal gods with her filth. She dares touch what was blessed in golden prayer. The guards laid Naya on the stone slab in the center of the square. The sun, still blazing, made the rock burn like fire. Her back tensed, knowing what was coming. A long whip, thin as a reed and cruel as drought, lashed through the air. Crack. Her skin split open, the pain blooming like wild roses in her nerves. Another lash. The nobles watched. Some winced. Most laughed. Was a show. Blood ran down Naya's back, dripping onto the stone, onto the very soil that bore witness to centuries of injustice. And in that moment something happened. The queen's necklace, a tight choker of crimson gold, shimmered strangely in the light. Then it pulsed. Just once. But enough to catch the attention of a nearby servant, who gasped and collapsed onto the ground, eyes rolled back in terror. The laughter stilled. The queen stepped back, touching the necklace as if to calm it. Her fingers trembled just slightly. Later that night, the palace lay under a velvet sky stitched with stars. Torches crackled. Music from distant courts faded. But the queen couldn't sleep. She tossed in her silken bed, her breath uneven. Then the dream came. It was vivid, like stepping into another world, one made of shadow and ash and fire. She stood in her throne room. But the floor was submerged in blood, ankle-deep and moving like a tide. And seated on her throne was Naya. Not in rags but robed in violet and gold. On her neck was the crimson gold necklace, now gleaming with pride. On her head was the queen's crown. Her face calm. Eyes glowing. Around her stood faceless figures, old queens long dead, whispering blessings in forgotten tongues. The queen tried to speak but found her lips sewn shut. She tried to move but her limbs were frozen. Naya looked at her and said nothing. Just lifted a hand and pointed. The queen woke with a scream, soaked in sweat. Her hand flew to the necklace around her throat. It was still there, but heavier. As if it carried something new. Something watching her from within. In the servant quarters, Naya lay quietly on her mat. Her wounds stung. But her heart was calm. She could still feel the sting of the whip, but beneath it, something deeper, something alive. Like her blood had spoken to the earth and the necklace had listened. Outside, the courtyard stone still bore the stain of her blood. And for the first time in years, not a single noble dared walk across it. Something had shifted. A thread had been pulled. And Naya, the mud girl, now carried more than just pain. She carried a promise. The great hall of Kandara was draped in silk and filled with the aroma of roasted meats and spice wine. Laughter echoed across the polished stone, and the nobles of the court raised jeweled goblets under golden lanterns. The queen sat high on her throne, her crimson gold necklace gleaming like a second crown around her neck. Servants moved like shadows, placing plates, refilling cups, bowing low, and among them was Naya. She kept her head down as always, her feet bare, her wrists still bruised from the last lashing. Her eyes had grown quiet but not dull. Behind them stirred something deep, something that watched. As she carried a tray of sliced mangoes and dried antelope meat, the queen's voice rang through the air like polished steel. "Tonight we celebrate the sealing of peace with the northern tribes," she declared. "Let Kandara be known not only for her strength, but for her elegance." A chorus of cheers followed. But just then a flicker passed near Naya's cheek, soft, warm, buzzing. It was a firefly. She paused. Another floated past her ear, then two more. In seconds, a soft green glow began to circle her like a halo. Dozens. Then hundreds. The insects swarmed only her, dancing through her hair, crawling down her arms like glowing beads. She stood motionless, bathed in their gentle light, while stunned silence spread like a wave through the hall. Someone laughed awkwardly. Then another joined. "Look," a noblewoman called, raising her fan to hide her smirk. "Even the insects think she's rotting." "She must have slept in swamp water," a courtier jeered. A third man leaned back and muttered, "It's a village curse. My uncle saw something like that before his goats died." Laughter erupted, but it was thin, strained, unsure. Naya did not move. Her eyes rose once, meeting the queen's gaze. The fireflies danced still, calmly. Their glow turned golden near her skin, as if absorbing her breath, her blood, her will. And when she blinked, it was as if the air around her pulsed. The queen's lips tightened. "Remove her," she commanded, voice sharp and brittle. "Now." Two guards stepped forward. The moment their boots touched the mosaic near Naya's feet, the fireflies swarmed faster, not in fear but in purpose. The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. One reached forward to grab Naya's arm. The moment his skin brushed hers, he screamed. He dropped to his knees, clawing at his throat. His lips turned black in an instant, his eyes rolling back. His body convulsed once, then stilled. The hall erupted in screams and overturned goblets. Nobles fled their chairs, some falling over each other in terror. The queen rose, face pale but composed. Only the necklace on her throat betrayed her. It glowed a deep, angry red, as though the blood of the guard had flowed directly into it. Naya stood untouched. The fireflies now floated in perfect formation around her, not wild but deliberate. A halo. A circle of light around darkness. The queen's voice shook for the first time. She is not just a servant. Someone shouted, "Witch?" Another whispered, "It's the necklace." It reacted again. But Naya didn't move. She lowered her gaze once more, turned, and walked silently from the hall. No one followed her. The fireflies faded as she passed through the doors, vanishing into the night air. Behind her, nobles argued in hushed tones. The fallen guard was dragged away. No one dared mention the dream the queen had spoken of in private, of Naya wearing a crown, of blood dripping from the throne, of silence so loud it cracked mirrors. That night, no feast was finished. And in their chambers, many courtiers lay awake, listening to every creak in the palace walls, wondering if the fireflies would visit them next. And in the queen's chamber, the necklace burned hot against her throat. She tried to remove it. She couldn't. Her fingers shook, blistering at the touch of the clasp. It would not come off. Outside, Naya walked barefoot toward the old laundry house, the air around her still pulsing gently. The fireflies had gone. But the glow remained in her bones now, not just a curse, not just a whisper, but something older. Something listening. She did not smile. She simply waited. Because this was not her revenge yet. It was only her warning. The scrolls were older than anyone in the palace could remember, written in faded ink, their edges brittle with time, sealed in leather that smelled of dust and ghosts. After the incident at the feast, the queen could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. Fireflies didn't swarm slaves unless the spirits sent them. And the necklace burned hot against her skin even as she stood motionless on her marble throne. Priest Kamala, ancient and hunched, entered the royal court under guard. He wore a robe patched with prayers and charms stitched by trembling hands. He hadn't been called to the palace in over a decade, not since the last omen when locusts had darkened the sky after a prince drowned in still water. Now, as he stood before the queen, his eyes didn't rest on her. They flicked deliberately to Naya, who had been forced to kneel beside a pillar like a shadow in chains. The court chamber was silent as the priest opened one of the scrolls. His voice trembled not from fear, but from reverence. "This," he said, lifting a page high, "is the story of the Crimson Binding. Centuries ago, before Kandara was a kingdom, before this palace was stone, a warlord known as Zube the Collector marched across the plains. He did not take land or gold. He took children. Every village, every hut, he stripped of their young, forcing them to mine in the caves of Mount Aba for a cursed metal that shimmered red like dried blood under the moon. Some nobles scoffed, but others shifted uncomfortably. The queen's fingers twitched over her necklace, now warm, no hot, against her collarbone. They died by the hundreds, Kamala continued, buried under rock, drowned by greed. Only one child returned from those pits. Her tongue was gone, her hands burned black. But her eyes, he looked again at Naya. They said her eyes shone with every soul that died below the mountain. Whispers swirled. The queen stood abruptly. Enough of this. But the priest didn't bow. The crimson gold in your necklace, your majesty, is not ornament. It is remembrance. It is punishment. It seeks the one born not just in sorrow but in chains. One whose tears have tasted ash. One whose silence holds screams. A hush. Naya, still kneeling, raised her head slightly. The curse, Kamala finished, will only complete its path when its rightful keeper wears it freely. If denied, it brings rot to the kingdom. Fire to the throne. The queen's face paled. She yanked the necklace from her throat, trying to throw it away, but it clung like a second skin. Her nails bled trying to tear it off. It hissed. "Remove it," she screamed, but no one moved. One of her ministers approached hesitantly. "My queen, what if we silence the curse by silencing the girl?" The queen's face twisted. "Yes. Yes, before the next moonrise. She must die." Gasps echoed. "Your Majesty," a courtier protested, "she has done nothing. She has done everything. She's brought this doom upon us." Guards seized Naya, dragging her away. She didn't scream, didn't fight. But her eyes, those watching swore, held fire. Not from fury, not from hatred, but from knowledge. Back in her cell, The air thick with whispers only she could hear, Naya sat with her hands chained and a calm expression. The curse wasn't something she feared anymore. It was memory, and she was its vessel. Outside, in the palace corridors, tapestries began to unravel. Statues cracked down the middle. The queen couldn't sleep, not because of fear but because every time she closed her eyes she saw Naya, wearing her necklace, sitting on her throne, and smiling. The blood gold remembered, and it would not be denied. The dungeon beneath Kandara's palace was carved from the bones of the earth, cold, damp, and meant to crush the spirit of whoever it held. But Naya sat in the corner of her cell, her back straight, her gaze steady. Her feet were shackled, her wrists bruised from rough handling, but her mind was fire. Above, the kingdom of Kandara stirred restlessly under a sky that refused to weep. The air hung heavy as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Farmers stared at their withering crops in disbelief. Stalks of millet that once danced under the sun drooped in sorrow. Leaves curled. Soil cracked. Not a single drop of rain had touched the kingdom since the day Naya had been locked away. At first the priests dismissed it. A delay in the clouds, they said. The wind has shifted. But as the days dragged on, the skies grew darker and heavier as if swollen with grief, and still no rain. Women climbed the hills and sang old songs to coax the sky to open. Men lit incense and offered prayers at the shrines. Nothing moved the clouds. They brooded like watchers as if waiting. Within the palace, fear stirred behind gilded doors. Servants walked lighter, speaking in hushed tones. The queen's sleep turned to fragments. Every time she closed her eyes she saw Naya not in chains, but sitting on her throne, the cursed necklace glowing like a wound around her neck. Her advisors tried to distract her with games, perfumes, exotic fruits. But even the fruit had begun to spoil too quickly. Worse still, the children of the court had begun to cry in their sleep. They'd wake up screaming, speaking of a girl made of ash and fire, whose eyes held the end of the world. A girl who walked through flames and left footprints of rainless soot behind her. They described Naya without knowing her name. The queen ordered all such children to be kept silent. But whispers leaked as they always did. In the cell, Naya counted the cracks on the wall. She'd memorized their patterns now. They reminded her of roots. She pressed her palm against the cold stone and whispered old words her mother used to chant before dawn in their village, the ones the invaders had tried to burn away. "You will not forget us," she whispered. And the walls whispered back. On the 7th day of the drought, something stranger happened. Animals throughout the kingdom, goats, hounds, even royal peacocks, began to refuse food. Water dishes were untouched. Their eyes were wide, watchful. They avoided shadows as if sensing something unseen. A stable boy claimed the horses bowed when he passed Naya's cell window. No one believed him, until others saw the same. The guards assigned to her cell began to behave oddly. One grew pale and feverish, saying Naya's eyes followed him even when he turned away. Another swore he heard the sound of dripping water inside the dry cell, soft, steady as if the walls were crying. A third never returned after a shift. They found his armor piled neatly outside the palace gate, his boots filled with black feathers. In the royal chambers, the queen stood before her mirror, trying to brush her hair, but every strand she pulled began to sing. Not loud, just a hum like wind through reeds. When she touched the necklace around her throat, it hissed with heat. She yanked it off and threw it across the room, but it didn't hit the ground, it vanished into mist before it touched stone. She screamed. The high priest was summoned again. He flipped through scrolls with trembling fingers. His voice cracked as he read the final line of an ancient passage aloud. "The land will not drink again until the chained girl sings beneath the moonlight." The queen paled. "What song?" she demanded. "What does it mean?" But the priest only shook his head. "The song of her grief. Of all who died before her. The necklace doesn't want to be worn, it wants to be heard." That night, the queen ordered a dozen guards to bring Naya to the courtyard, not for execution but to be questioned. She wanted answers. But the guards who descended into the dungeon never returned. Hours passed. When they finally opened the cell again, Naya was still sitting in the same corner. Except now the cracked stone around her feet was wet. A small pool shimmered beneath her, clear water, sweet-smelling. One drop at a time, it dripped from the ceiling that had been dry for centuries. She cupped it in her hand and looked up at the captain. Her voice was soft. "It's not the kingdom that's thirsty. It's the dead." And she smiled. Above them the sky grumbled. Not thunder, not yet, but something close. The clouds moved for the first time in days. But no rain fell. The air grew warmer still, and the queen, watching from her tower, suddenly felt something moving in her chest. A heartbeat that wasn't hers. Naya was no longer alone. Every stone in that dungeon remembered. Every shadow leaned closer to her flame. And still she waited. The rain would come, but not for the queen. Not yet. As the torches crackled in the moonlit court of Kandara, nobles gathered for what was promised to be a spectacle: the execution of the mud girl, the cursed servant who had stirred whispers in every corridor of the palace. The queen stood tall on the high platform, draped in her ceremonial robes, her chin raised in defiance, yet her eyes betraying a shadow of unease. The blood-gold necklace sat heavy on her throat, its crimson stones pulsing like veins, not merely ornament but omen. The wind was still that night. Too still. Not even the palace banners swayed. She wore it to reclaim control, to remind the court that she was ruler, not a girl born in dirt. "Let them see who commands," she had hissed at her maidens as they fastened the necklace, ignoring how it pulsed like a heartbeat. Yet the moment it clasped around her neck, something changed. It wasn't just tight, it gripped. Like fingers curling. Whispers began to stir among the crowd, not of fear for Naya, but of dread at the queen herself. For as she raised her hands to speak, the jewels of the necklace turned a darker shade, not red but almost black. Smoke began to curl from the collar. And a voice, soft, sibilant and filled with ancient fury, hissed through the stones, "She is here." Then the great bronze doors at the far end creaked open. Naya stood in the doorway. She wore no crown, no robe. Only the ragged garments they had meant to bury her in. Her hair was loose, wild with wind no one else could feel. But it was the chains, those rusted shackles that once cut her wrists, that now floated behind her like ethereal wings, glowing faintly as if lit from within. She did not run. She walked, each step measured like a drumbeat. The nobles gasped and many fell to their knees, not in reverence but in terror. Some cried out for the guards but none moved. The executioner had dropped his blade and knelt, weeping. The queen staggered back. Her voice caught. "You." The necklace tightened. It cut into her throat, drawing a thread of blood. She screamed, clawing at it, but it would not come off. "Sorcery," she shrieked. "She is a witch. Kill her." But her voice was drowned out, by a roar not from the court, but from the very stones of the palace. The floor trembled. Torches flared. Shadows twisted. Naya raised her hand. The necklace burst into flame. Crimson fire licked up the queen's throat, engulfing her in a halo of heat. Her scream shattered glass. The nobles fled in chaos, some wailing, others vomiting as the scent of blood gold filled the air, sweet, metallic and unforgettable. But Naya stood still. The flames did not touch her. She walked forward through the smoke. The queen dropped to her knees, her hands now blistered and useless. Her eyes met Naya's. They were not the eyes of a servant. Not anymore. They were ancient. They were remembering. Naya knelt before her, not in submission but in farewell. "You drank from their pain," Naya whispered. "Now drink from mine." The necklace flared one last time and melted down the queen's neck, searing into her skin, fusing with her bones. Her final scream echoed into silence. Then nothing. Naya stood. The court was empty now, save for her and the throne. She did not sit. She turned and walked back into the moonlight, her chain wings trailing behind her like smoke from an old fire. And behind her, the throne cracked, a line from top to base, clean and final, as if the very seat of Kandara's power had split open, making way for something older. Something returned. The throne room had never known silence like this. No music echoed, no wine spilled, no soft laughter of nobles filled the air. Only the memory of flame and a tightening necklace haunted the marble pillars and golden walls. Where once the queen had stood, draped in stolen splendor, there remained only a burnt crescent on the stone, shaped like a severed chain. Smoke still lingered in the velvet curtains. It was not the smoke of wood or incense but something older, something that smelled of blood memories and burned oaths. Nobles crouched on the floor, unmoving, their faces pale and slick with sweat. Not a single one dared rise. They did not know why their knees had buckled the moment Naya had entered, only that they had. Their bodies remembered what their minds refused to admit. Power had changed hands not by decree, but by something older than any throne. Naya had not come wearing a crown. She had not come with an army. She had simply walked in, barefoot, the shattered remnants of her chains dragging behind her like ash-painted wings. The sound they made, metal on stone, soft and scraping, stayed long after she was gone. It settled into the bones of the palace like a second heartbeat. One noble, trembling, whispered, "Did she take the crown?" But no crown had been taken. Naya had walked past the throne, looked it in the eye, and turned away. Her voice, steady, shaped by years of silence, cruelty and fire, had spoken only one sentence. "No chain goes unremembered." Then she vanished. No one saw how. Some say she turned into smoke. Others swore she walked into a shadow and never returned. A few claimed the fireflies had come again, swarming around her like 1,000 tiny guardians, leading her into the night like they had always been waiting. But she was gone. The queen was never seen again. Her name was scraped from the coins, her portraits torn from the halls. Even the birds that once perched outside her chambers refused to sing there again. The necklace had turned to dust, black and bitter, like ash after a cursed fire, and was buried under the palace stones, but everyone heard it still. When night came and the wind blew just right, there would be the faint rattle of chains, a sound no servant could explain. The people of Kandara changed. The markets began to close earlier. No one walked the palace gardens after sundown. Children were told never to whisper mockery for fear of waking her echo. That's what they called her now, not Naya, not the slave girl, not even queen. Her echo. For she was everywhere and nowhere. They said if you mocked the poor, you'd hear a step behind you in the dark. If you raised your hand to a servant, a necklace-shaped bruise would appear on your wrist by morning. If you dared to sit on the throne and laugh, that laugh would turn into a choke before the hour ended. And still she never returned. But in the villages, mothers told their daughters her story, not as fear but fire. "You are not broken," they would whisper as they brushed ash from their child's cheek. "You are the key." The old washerwoman by the river now spoke with a proud smile, not in warning but in memory. Her tears boiled into fire, she said to those who came seeking stories. And the palace learned to kneel. The nobles, now gray and hollow-eyed, lived long but silent lives. None ever regained joy. The throne sat empty, not because no one wanted it but because no one dared. Each attempt brought whispers in the walls, dreams of burning gold and the soft scrape of chains. And so the kingdom endured, not ruled but remembered. Some say Naya became the wind, carrying justice to every corner of the land. Others say she walks still, barefoot through distant villages, reminding the broken they are keys, not ruins. And in every place her story is told, chains rust, laughter humbles, and the fireflies gather in quiet witness. For the throne that once laughed now weeps, and the girl they mocked as a slave? She became memory, justice, and shadow. And no chain, no matter how old, goes unremembered. In a corner of the palace gardens, where no noble dares walk and no gardener tends, wildflowers grow in unruly abundance, crimson, violet, and ghostly white. They encircle a single unmarked mound of earth, a place where the winds hum softly and birds never sing. Children born long after the queen's reign whisper stories as they pass by it, tugged there by some invisible thread of memory and mystery. The earth here is always warm even in winter. Buried beneath that mound lies the queen's necklace, its stones now dim, its gold dulled by time and soil. No one saw who laid it there. One morning, it simply appeared, half submerged in the dirt, like the earth itself had swallowed it in shame. Some say it was Naya who placed it there herself, her hands no longer chained but trembling with power too great to carry. Others claim she vanished into mist, her body never found, her spirit wandering free, guiding the broken-hearted, whispering to the forgotten. The elders call her the slave no more, the shadow queen, the one who remembered. They say she turned her pain into protection. That she never sought revenge, only justice wrapped in fire. The nobles never speak her name, but every year without fail the flowers bloom, without seed, without root, without rain. As if the land itself has vowed to remember her. No slave ever walks alone now. Those who serve in silence feel the ground hum beneath their feet, and they say it's her, Naya, walking beside them barefoot, crownless but never again bowed.